welcome to the tavern. It's that time of year again, the time to talk about the financial reports of toy companies. Because yes, this is important because it shows you the direction the market is going, and honestly, it's nice to occasionally have a report I can look through that's actually positive. Yes, it's Hasbro's biggest competitor, Mattel. This year they had a little bit of good and a little bit of bad, but overall, this was the best year Mattel has had in a very long time. Both the fourth quarter, which had $1.62 billion in net sales, up 16% from the previous year, joined together by the net sales for the year, which was $5.44 billion. If anything, Mattel is doing really, really well. Part of that, of course, is due to the power of the Barbie brand. Last year, the Barbie movie made a ton of money in the box office. Now, let's bear in mind, Mattel was not the production company behind Barbie. They were probably given a license fee and probably get a percentage of the sales. However, information about that is relatively unclear. What is clear is that it really helped revitalize Barbie as a brand. In addition to that, during the fourth quarter, they had some really good North American growth. This is primarily due to the fact that, Christmas came up, and if you have a bunch of kids wanting Barbie dolls, well, you're gonna get that bigger growth. However, on the international side of things, they didn't have nearly as much growth, which is understandable as some of the brands really do feel like they would tie closer into Americans than they would really fit in a lot of other countries. However, once you get to the yearly side, it doesn't seem nearly as good. Yearly, they only had 1% growth in North America. That's not really much to talk about. And on the international side of things, they stayed about the same. So, while the fourth quarter was gangbusters, the yearly isn't quite as good, showing that there's still some issues on the toy side of the market. In addition to that, their operating costs went up by $61 million, which is going to lead to some problems. But first, let's break down how well sales really went by brand. Globally, the biggest seller were dolls. Now, the doll brands were led by Barbie, obviously, alongside Disney Princesses, Disney Frozen, and Monster High. For the fourth quarter, it made $763 million, a 29% jump from 2022. That is impressive. That shows you that the doll brands have had some major growth. In addition to that, the second highest worldwide grossing brand section was vehicles. This includes all their various types of toy vehicles. Of course, the product leader for this one is Hot Wheels. But overall, vehicles made $475 million this Christmas, an 18% growth. So even though girls' brands had a huge jump, one of the boy brands also had a pretty good jump, showing that maybe toys have become a bigger Christmas gift again. Dropping down in growth is the infant, toddler, and preschooler set of brands, which had $292 million, which is still a 9% growth. Not too shabby. Finally, we have the worldwide gross of all the other brands that get shoved together into one big block, primarily because none of them really made enough to warrant their own subsection. So action figures, building sets, games, and other, Magic 8 Ball, together made $311 million, and it is a 3% growth. However, the growth was primarily on the games side of things, while action figures had a drop, which keeps the growth number from being as high as it possibly could be. Overall, a very strong fourth quarter, and clearly toy sales have improved, but that drop in action figures is worrying, and it becomes an even bigger worry when we look at how it turned out for the year. On the yearly side, dolls of course dominated, with $2.39 billion. About half their revenue came from just the doll brands. It is a 15% growth from 2022, which is crazy good and really shows how much power the Barbie brand as well as the secondary doll brands all have. The next most popular, just like for the quarterly, is vehicles at $1.64 billion, a 13% growth over 2022. However, as you notice, it is half what dolls made, but still making up about a quarter of the overall sales of toys. So Hot Wheels have really gotten a major resurgence last year, and odds are that'll probably stick around. because a lot of kids love cars and trucks and construction vehicles and whatever else they can do. My older brother had one of those track sets when we were growing up, and it was awesome. Those were the only two brand segments that had growth this year. The infant, toddler, and preschooler brands only made about $1 billion, which is a 10% drop from 2022. Includes losses in Fisher-Price, as well as the Imaginext and Baby Gear brand lines. I have no idea why this happened. Maybe there's other competing toddler brands out there that are getting the money. However, the biggest loser was the grouping of all those secondary brands. As a reminder, that is action figures, building sets, games, and other, which again, like toddler stuff, made just over $1 billion, which is a 24% drop. Those are Hasbro numbers. Jeez. And the loss is blamed on action figures. Pro Wrestling and He-Man are not selling. Now, whether this is a lack of interest in the brands of these characters, or if it is the issue that Ramses brought up in my previous video on the Hasbro job losses, where a lot of the toys are just not being put on shelves because the shelves are currently clogged, and a lot of those other toys just make their way to discount stores. Either way, that reduces demand when you can't find anything new that you want. Wrestling has had its share of controversies, especially recently, and He-Man has had his share of issues, especially with the Netflix show not doing particularly well. Overall, despite some really big growth in a couple brands, we do see that there are still issues with the toy market. As much as I can talk about the doll brands doing very well, there is one doll brand that did not. That's American Girl. It had a 6% drop in Q4 and a 9% drop overall for the year. In fact, it got so bad that it sounds like they're going to be removing American Girl from international markets to see if they can save some money and have less losses for the brand. For those who don't know, American Girl is something of a prestige brand, as the dolls are quite expensive, as are their accessories and their playsets. Not only that, but they have specific American Girl stores that have an experience that girls can go through, which can include tea parties and various displays showing off all their adventures in their books. More than that, the fact that they had to group a bunch of other brands together to make one brand grouping just to show some sense of profit is also pretty sad, which goes to show that those brands overall are not doing particularly well, otherwise they would have their own segment, as things like action figures or board games probably should in an ideal world. But they're just not doing that great. However, it did say that board game growth did happen in the Q4, and if board game growth continues to happen, we may see it spread out as its own segment. The future does look good for Mattel. However, obviously they're going to get that slowdown now that we're out of the holiday season. And it is curious to see how the Barbie brand will do this year as the movie starts to fade out of public consciousness. Then again, if they win some Oscars, that might give the brand yet another boost. The big thing to worry about when it comes to Mattel is that they're trying to start up some cost-saving measures. This likely means they'll either start producing less of the brands that don't do as well, or more likely, they will start doing layoffs. And odds are the layoffs will either come from the weaker brands, such as the action figure department, or potentially even the infant, toddler, and preschooler department. But more than likely, I think they're going to start closing down American Girl stores and possibly liquidating some of that overstock, because it is a possibility as the year progresses, especially if the American Girl brand does not recover. Even though the Hasbro report will come out next week, I can already tell you that Mattel did better. And it goes to show that when you aim for what your customer wants and put out the effort to produce an inexpensive product that can make a decent profit back, such as Hot Wheels or the extra clothes and accessories for dolls, you will actually succeed in the toy business. We'll see how Hasbro does, but odds are they're not even going to come close to these types of numbers. Thank you for watching. I hope this has enlightened you on the current status of the toy industry. If you want to see more videos like this, then please like, please subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other companies you'd like me to look at, because Hasbro and Mattel are only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to entertainment companies producing toys and other products. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the tavern.